Welcome to today's podcast of Places, People, Purpose. In today's episode, we begin our exploration of a brand new place, and that is Botswana and the Okavango Delta. This World Heritage Site is a sanctuary to some of the world's most endangered animals and birds. Before we focus in on the Okavango Delta region, let's take a brief look at the country of Botswana. The Republic of Botswana shares a common border with South Africa to the south, Namibia to the west and north, Zimbabwe to the east, and Zambia to the north. Botswana is inhabited by people predominantly of Tswana origin, whose recorded history can be traced back to the 14th century. Today, the country is named after this dominant ethnic group, but the Botswana term is used inclusively to mean all citizens of Botswana. Prior to European contact, the Botswana lived as herders and farmers under tribal rule. During the 1800s, Britain was consolidating its military and economic strength as a major colonial power in southern Africa. At the same time, Dutch settlers, calling themselves Afrikaners or Boers, and German settlers in Namibia were pushing northwards and westwards, respectively, annexing more and more Botswana lands. In 1870, some Botswana leaders engaged with the British government regarding the threat of their territory's annexation by the Dutch and German settlers. These discussions resulted in the country becoming a British protectorate in 1885. After 80 years as a British protectorate, in June of 1964, Britain accepted proposals for democratic self-government in Botswana. The 1965 Constitution led to the first general elections and to Botswana's independence on September 30th, 1966. Seretse Khama, a leader in the independence movement and the legitimate claimant to traditional rule of the Botswana, was elected as the first president, re-elected twice, and died in office in 1980. The president of Botswana today, who was sworn in on April 1st, 2018, is President Masisi. President Masisi represents the Botswana Democratic Party, which has won a majority in every parliamentary election since Botswana's independence. Botswana is often cited as a model for the rest of the African continent, and it is a well-run, stable, and prosperous democratic country. Of course, like all countries, it has its problems, but these are minor in comparison to the lack of resources, overpopulation, and significant poverty that impacts so much of the African continent. With that bit of background, let's turn to the Okavango Delta. Botswana's Okavango Delta stands as a true marvel of nature, often referred to as the Jewel of the Kalahari. This extraordinary wetland oasis, formed by the Okavango River, is one of the world's most unique and pristine wilderness areas. The Okavango River originates in the uplands of Angola and travels 1,600 kilometers or 1,000 miles in a southeast direction, flowing across Namibia's Zambezi region before arriving in Botswana. Unlike typical river deltas that flow into oceans, the Okavango River discharges its waters into the vast expanse of the Kalahari Desert. This enigmatic phenomenon is a result of tectonic activity that blocks the river's path to the sea, causing it to fan out into a sprawling maze of channels, lagoons, and islands. The area that receives the flow of the Kalahari River is an extension of the Great Rift Valley, which is an enormous 6,400-kilometer fault in the African plateau that stretches from Syria southwards through Ethiopia and East Africa, and then disappears just north of the Zambezi River. Over thousands of years, wind-blown sand and other sediments brought down by the river have collected in the fault and impact the river's flow. So instead of flowing into the sea, the Kalahari River flows into the Kalahari Desert. Typically, the rains begin in November, and the level of the river slowly rises and reaches its peak sometime in February or March, and then it floods over into the slightly lower floodplains. At its peak, the Okavango Delta covers approximately 15,000 square kilometers or 5,800 square miles of northern Botswana, making it one of the largest inland deltas on the planet. The Okavango Delta is a biodiversity hotspot of global importance. Its complex ecosystem sustains a staggering array of wildlife, earning it a UNESCO World Heritage Site designation. When we traveled to Botswana, we arrived at the Okavango Delta by first flying into the city of Maun. Although small, Maun is the busiest airport in Botswana, and we, like most people, only used it for a transfer point to catch a small plane to the Delta area for our camp. Most of the pilots that fly you into the Okavango Delta are from local communities, and this is primarily because Botswana had the foresight to invest in the training of local pilots more than a decade ago. For our flight, each aircraft had a single pilot. Because it is so geographically unique, a small plane is a wonderful way to see the Delta region. Depending on the time of year you are there, you may see vast expanse of land underwater. If the land isn't mostly submerged, it's a great way to spot elephants, buffalo, and hippos. On one leg of the trip, we flew by helicopter versus the small plane, and the visibility of animals from the helicopter was even better because of the lower altitude. When you arrive at your destination in the Delta, like other remote areas in Africa, it's not uncommon to have to clear the runway of wayward animals who don't realize that the place they are occupying is needed for the plane to land. What a fun and interesting problem to have. The Okavango River runs into Botswana each year, fanning out into the iconic Delta system. Each year, the system dries and then fills, with new channels opening, new islands forming, and new areas receiving water to replenish one of the richest ecosystems found anywhere on Earth. The government of Botswana has taken special precautions to ensure that this special area is protected for future generations. Ecotourism companies, or lodges, are able to build non-permanent accommodations or lodge facilities on areas where they have been allowed to lease land, and this arrangement is referred to as a commission. In return for being granted a commission, the companies have to meet strict environmental standards. In 1989, the government started a policy of community-based natural resource management in order to give local communities direct control over the use and benefits of natural resources within their traditional areas. This allows communities to have a greater say over the management of the commissions and the conditions of the management. While communities are involved, it is government that monitors the operations of each safari company and lodge operator, and very strict environmental and social regulations must be met by the tourism operators in order to be granted a commission. These include meeting environmental targets and providing employment for members of the community. The list of conditions is long and includes limits on the number of lodges allowed and the number of rooms and beds allowed by the lodges. This helps to keep the number of lodges within the Okavango Delta low enough to ensure that the ecosystem is not impacted or threatened by increased human presence. All in all, this system helps ensure that the ecosystem is protected and makes each visitor to the Okavango a valued contributor to its overall protection. That's all we have for today. We hope you enjoyed learning about the Okavango Delta and Botswana. Join us tomorrow when we learn even more about this amazing place. We look forward to having you with us for our next episode of Places, People, Purpose, where we create connections to our world.